Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio. So today, we are talking Passimian. We are talking budget decks. I get a lot of questions from newer listeners and other people just saying, hey Ross, I'm on a bit of a budget, I want to build a competitive Pokemon deck, but I don't want to spend a whole bunch of money. That is a very understandable thing. I do this myself on occasion, so you know what? Today we're talking budget decks, and if you want a budget deck, how about Passimian, a deck that is built around uncommon cards, mostly. Now, here, really with Passimian, if we're looking at the basics, we are talking about the attack team play. 1 double colourless energy, 10 damage plus 30 more for each of your benched Passimian. You get 3 Passimian on the bench because you can only play 4 Passimian in your deck. You do 90 damage plus the 10 base is 100 damage for a double colourless energy, and this can be done on your first turn where you're allowed to attack. Remember, you cannot attack on turn 1 if you go first, but you can if you go second. You get all 4 Passimian out, you get a double colourless on the 1 in the active, 100 damage first turn. It is not outside the realms of possibility that we might be able to do this. And this really is the basic of this deck. It is all built around getting this team play attack out and hitting with it nice and quickly. Now there is a first attack fling, 30 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon, not to the active, but maybe your opponent's got something like a Magikarp on the bench you want to KO, or maybe your opponent is about to be KO'd, they retreat a Pokemon, you don't want to waste a Lysander bringing it into the active, so you KO it on the bench with Fling. Hitting the bench can be very nice indeed. Now, it is a fighting type. Fighting type is good. You are hitting a whole bunch of Pokemon for weakness. Darkrai is a deck that sees a lot of play. We are hitting for weakness here. Umbreon GX, I think, is going to be one of the best new cards from the Pokemon Sun and Moon expansion. You're hitting him for weakness here as well. Although, do forget that a lot of things like Yveltal, like Rayquaza, like Pidgeot will have resistance, and you'll actually do less damage to them. Now, we've talked about the first attack, and that's all well and good, but actually we can do better, because there is a card from Fates Collide, Mew, and Mew makes this deck even better, because Mew's got a nice ability whereby you can copy the attacks of any of your basic Pokemon in play, and Passimian is a basic Pokemon. So what you do is you use the Mew from Fates Collide, and you copy the attack of Passimian, but now instead of being limited to having 3 Pokemon on the bench, you can now have 4 Passimian on the bench, and you're now hitting for 130 damage. Now, I know Mew is a rare holo, not an uncommon, but if this is the most expensive card in the deck, we're not doing too bad. As a side note, if you want to play this deck, I would try and pick up the Mews sooner rather than later, because they could go up in price if this deck becomes big. 130, 1 double colourless energy. I like this, ladies and gentlemen. I like it a lot. And of course, Passimian's weakness to Psychic means that in the mirror match, Mew will be able to take KOs very, very easily. You want one more good thing about Mew? How about the fact that he has a 0 retreat cost, so if you start with Mew, you can retreat into Passimian if you really want to attack and get that fighting typing rather than Psychic. Because of course here, if you want to hit an Umbreon for fighting weakness, you use Passimian. If you want to hit a Mega Mewtwo for Psychic weakness, you use Mew. Yay! Now there are some key cards we need here. First of all, as I've said, Mew, and we've got double colourless energy. I cannot tell you how much double colourless energy really helps in this deck. To be perfectly honest, you can get away in this deck only playing double colourless energy, playing 4 of them and no others. Now, if you're playing double colourless energy only, you will need to play special charge, and honestly, I don't think 1 is enough. I think you'll need 2. And you need this to get your double colourless energy out of the discard and back into your deck. You will also need to watch against cards like Giratina, for instance, who will, with his Chaos Wheel attack, stop you attaching your double colourless energy. And cards like the promo Jirachi, who will discard it and then gain immunity. Although for Jirachi, all you do is wait a turn, And then you KO Jirachi, because he cannot discard a double colourless in play if there isn't one in play, and then he doesn't get the immunity. Yay! If you are worried about things like Giratina here, what you really want to do is play Pokemon Ranger, which turns off the effect of Giratina. Now, while we're talking about Mew here, I do have to mention that he is reliant on an ability, and it is a basic ability. Silent Lab, Garbodor, Hex Maniac, all of these turn off Mew, but it's not the end of the world. Mew has free retreat, so you can just retreat and attack with a Passimian instead. Other key cards, Fighting Fury Belt, gives you extra HP, means your attacks do an extra 10 damage, and given that you're largely attacking here with Mew and Passimian, both of whom are basics, Fighting Fury Belt becomes very important indeed. You will need to play Super Rod here. You need all of your Passimian, and you need them every single turn. You need to be playing Super Rod to get those Passimian back into the deck as soon as they are KO'd. You will also need to play Town Map here. You need all 4 Passimian in play. You're also really reliant on your double colourless energy. Even if you play other energy, you're still super reliant on your double colourless. You need to play Town Map so you know every time you take a prize, you can take the thing that you need the most. And of course, one more quick mention for Special Charge. Even if you're playing other energy, Special Charge is huge. Now, you will need consistency cards here, and we've got a bunch. Really, with a deck like Passimian, it is about early pressure. You're really, with a Mew with a Fighting Fury Belt, you're still maxing out at 140 damage here. 120 for 4 Passimians, plus 10 base, plus 10 for Fighting Fury Belt, which is not huge, especially against your big EXs and GXs. So the key to this deck is getting going fast and hitting for good damage from the very early game. So you want to be playing cards like Nest Ball, the new card that allows you to search for your basics, like Acro Bike, and like Trainer's Mail. Trainer's Mail, you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, find a trainer not called Trainer's Mail and put it in your hand. And Acro Bike, you look at the top 2 cards, put one in your hand and discard one. You want to be running through the majority of your deck very, very quickly here, and this is another argument to only play double colourless. If you're playing 7 or 8 energy, you're only playing one of them down per turn, which means you're not running down through your deck all that quickly. Your hand is getting clunked up by energy cards. But if you're just playing 4 double colourless, you're going to have fewer energy cards in your hand and more that you can play down. Another option here, and this does take it out of being a budget deck, I'm sorry about that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still cheaper than most decks, but it takes it away from being full-on budget deck. It's Shaymin EX. I don't like that Shaymin EX is so good in this deck, but I am afraid, ladies and gentlemen, it is that darn good in this deck. As I was saying, you play 4 double colourless energy, you play lots of item cards like Trainer's Mail and Acro Bike, you play your hand down to very few cards, maybe even playing an Ultra Ball to discard 2 more, grab your Shaymin, and then draw up until you've got a full hand again. Shaymin is very good. Now, there are some other options you might wish to play here. First of all, Oranguru. Now, Oranguru is not as good as Shaymin. He is not a replacement for Shaymin, let's be very clear about this. But he allows you to draw until you've got 3 cards in your hand. So if you can make a really aggressive deck, like I've said, and then you play something like Ultra Ball to grab your Oranguru, then you can grab 2 or 3 cards with him and kind of keep it going. It's not as good as drawing 6 with Shaymin, but if you want to go full budget and you're not playing any Shaymin, I am not saying Oranguru is a replacement for Shaymin, but I am saying that Oranguru can help to mitigate the damage done by not playing Shaymin. Now, you can play Strong Energy here, allows your attack to do an extra 20 to the active. My big downside here is, first of all, as I've said, it will clunk up your hand if you're trying to play a really fast version of the deck. And secondly, now you're attaching 2 energy to attack. Now your opponent playing something like Promo Jirachi or Enhanced Hammer is going to slow you down even more. I really believe that this deck has to be the fastest one. It has to be faster than your opponent's decks, and you do that here by just playing double colourless. Another option here is Max Elixir. Look at the top 6 cards of your deck, find a basic energy and attach it to your benched basic Pokemon. You can play basic fighting here and this can help you to get your energy out, but you really need to be playing quite a few basic energy in order to make Max Elixir worth it, and I just think you're clunking up your deck way too much. Playing the Max Elixir and playing the basic energy, I think you're going to have to cut down your consistency cards here, and I don't like that at all. Something I do like is Skyfield. Allows you to have 8 bench Pokemon rather than 5. You want 4 bench Passimian, and you want Mew, and you want Shaman, and you might want Oranguru here. You'll notice that you're not playing all of them with just 5 bench spots. Our stadium of choice here really should be Skyfield. And the other card I like quite a lot in here, and it is played in my personal list, is Puzzle of Time. You play 2 at the same time, you get to grab any 2 cards from your discard pile and put them in your hand. Well, I want to be recovering Passimian, and I really want to be recovering my double colourless energy here. I need a lot of cards, even something like Fighting Fury Belt, and as much as I can play things like Special Charge, and I can play Super Rod to get them into my deck, I really want them in my hand here, and that's why I love Puzzle of Time so much. And hey, if you're not drawing very well, just playing 1 and rearranging the top 3 cards of your deck could be fun. Although 99% of the time you will just keep them in the same order. That's how Puzzle of Time works. Now, if we want a quick word about the expanded format, now there are some new tricks here. You can play Focus Sash instead of Fighting Fury Belt. Stops your opponent one-hit KOing you. You can play Corinna here to search for a Passimian and an item card, maybe something like Nest Ball or Fighting Fury Belt. Obviously, we would want to play double colourless energy here. In fast decks that rely on double colourless energy, we play Computer Search so we can find that double colourless energy. We could play Hypnotoxic Laser and Verbank City Gym here, just to increase the amount of damage we're doing. Losing Skyfield is a pain, but doing an extra 30 damage between turns is very nice. And you could play Fighting Stadium here, but Fighting Stadium's got the old language. It only does extra damage to EXs, not GXs. I'm really playing Verbank in Expanded here. I'm not playing Fighting Stadium. I think Passimian could be a really, really good deck, especially as a budget option. It's really, really good. It hits a really nice weakness at the moment, and it can be a very fast deck. It may well not have the high-end damage output against some decks. I mean, something like Incineroar, for instance, is it going to be able to KO 250 HP Pokemon that are using Max Potion? I'm not entirely sure. Against something like Rayquaza with the high HP and the resistance, maybe it's not hitting up to do enough damage. Maybe it's going to be a little bit underpowered. But as a budget deck, as a speed deck, as a beginner's deck, there is an awful lot to like about Passimian, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you know the deal. There is a comment section. Go nuts, be nice. There are buttons to both like this video and subscribe to this channel, and I would very much like it if you would use them both. You can follow me on Twitter @TheWassy, and the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.